my goodness! Holy sh!
Well folks, if you watched last week's video, you know that I was taking a derelict truck from out of the field, getting it running, and then attempting to make a roughly 1,000-mile round trip to go pick up a project vehicle and go to a swap meet. After putting a week of piddling with that truck in, I changed my mind on which truck I wanted to use, so let's jump right into that. As you can see, it's quite frozen down. Oh, damn it. Oh. Oh. Let's take a look at this thing, evaluate it while I'm catching my breath. As you can see, it's a 306. It's got a 4-speed in it. Now, I don't actually own this truck. I just let the guy store it here. I talked to him, well, texted him. He told me he stopped driving it because the front cab mounts had rusted out so much that he couldn't get the clutch adjusted anymore. Yeah, that looks to be the case. Yeah, if you can see the steering shaft there, the cab's basically sitting on the steering column. Obviously, he robbed the brake booster off it. Radiator, brain box. I don't know what year it is. Going by the square headlights, it's going to be a 78 or 79. Extended cab, flatbed. Headliner's falling down. I don't know how long it's been out here. I'm thinking, I'd guess to my recollection, maybe 8 to 10 years. Maybe these will give me some hint. Local advertising rag. see. October 27th, 2010. So yeah, this thing's been out here roughly 12 years. Oh no, no key. I told him what I wanted to do with it, and he said to go ahead and have at it. He'd give it to me. Unfortunately, I can't see if it's unstuck. All right, let's see if the loader will pull it out of them holes now. Dug this out a little more. As you can see, it's, I don't know what the temperature out here today. I would say high 30s. So as I chip away at that frozen ground around this tire, it is thawing out what's there, but the sun's getting kind of low in the sky, so I don't think it's doing much good. Haven't done much to the other side. Dug it out a little bit. There's not much room in there to work. I'm going on the theory that if I can break this side loose and lift this side up, it will leverage that side into breaking loose. It's worked for me before in the past, but I've never encountered one frozen down this hard before. But yeah, it's been sitting for 12 years and sunk down into the ground. As you can see, I've pretty well got the tire dug out. It's just what's underneath that's holding it, and it's sitting too low. I can't get underneath there and do anything about it. Let's get back on the loader and see if she's ready to break free yet. Alright, got the passenger side. I've already got the forks repositioned. I'm going to pick up the passenger side really high and see if that'll just leverage loose this side. Hope you people appreciate this. I got invited to go to Texas Roadhouse, but instead I decided to stay home and film content for you guys. Got some fancy pants aluminum rims here for it. But the next challenge is to see if I can get the rear end dragged out, because I can't get back there to pick it up. That's not my property over there. Okay, got some tires and wheels on it. Not looking, well, okay, it still looks shabby, but it looks a lot better up off the ground. I got my work cut out for me. Okay, as you can imagine, that video of me getting this pulled out of the ground was pretty heavily edited. It took me roughly 4 hours from the time I started to getting it up here to the shop, roughly. But got her up on jack stands. And as you can see, that cab mount is gone. It's even worse on the other side. Let's take a look here at the rest of the floor. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Let's see if I can salvage something of this. I'm going to attempt to get this cab lifted up to the proper height and just basically weld in any pieces of scrap metal I can from the frame to the cab to get it where the clutch and steering are functional again. I think I can make good use of this here. I think it's a roller off of a boat trailer. Can use the shaft from out of there, and the worst thing about it's the galvanized coating. Hey, let's take a look at what I did. Tell me what you think. That's me. There, you got a better idea. Or if that wiring in the way. Basically what I did is I welded this plate. It's probably still hot. I welded this plate to the cab. But the welds really aren't what's holding it. The welds, it's butted up against that seam in the cab. So that should be what's really holding the weight. The only reason I really welded the plate to the cab was to, just in case things got to rocking and bouncing around, it wouldn't bounce that seam off of the plate. And then obviously I welded that piece of rod to the plate and right there to the old cab mount area. Let's let her down and see what happens. Well, from where I was at, I didn't see much movement. I heard some rust crackling in there. All right, I'm gonna move on to the other side. All right, got the passenger side done now. I did add a gusset here on both sides. I figured I better not count on the rear cab mounts being the only thing keeping the cab from shifting back and forth with as rusty as this entire cab is. So that's kind of what that was. Besides, that was only a half-inch rod there, and it's, yeah, it was pretty much unsupported in that hole, what, 4 inches right there. I'm not advocating to do this as a permanent repair on a truck you're driving, but this is just a simple quick fix on a ratty old truck that I'm just going to give one more chance to do truck type stuff with. Well, I think it's about, I don't know, 12, 14 degrees out. Pretty good wind blowing. Seems like a perfect day to be working outside on something. I'd rather be working on that, but this has more of a timeline involved, and I need to get parts for the mower anyway tomorrow while I'm in town at a doctor's appointment. I know I didn't show it, but the engine does turn. I put a bar on it. Like I said, it's been sitting 11 or 12 years. I have no faith in that carburetor working. Like I think I mentioned before, the owner told me that it did run good, and seeing as how he's giving it to me, he has no reason to be deceitful about it, so I'm just going to trust in his word and say that it is a good engine. But yeah, because I don't really feel like dinking around with a 1-barrel carburetor that's been sitting for 12 years. It's probably absolute crap. So with that in mind, all right, normally we'd check out the old wall headers here. I know I got a couple of 6-cylinder headers I picked up, but they're not hanging. I run out of room on the wall. Here's this one, a Headman. Found it on Craigslist, I don't know, a year or two ago. And these ones here I got at the Springfield, Missouri swap meet last summer. I don't know what brand these ones are. Not sure which one I'll use. I'll just have to see which ones fit better. For the intake, I've got this 1968 Unimog. It was a project several years ago. It went to the back burner. I don't think it's even on the stove anymore. The biggest problem was that I tore the rear axle apart, and the portal boxes were full of sand and water and rust, and that kind of put a serious damper on it. But I was swapping a Ford 306 into it. I just had all this old junk 300 engine in here just to start cutting away at the cab. I'll get out here and get that intake pulled off of there. Picked up this intake. It was on Craigslist several years ago. Guy had it for $35. You not Steve, but I'll pet you anyway. Yeah, you're not Steve. You don't have near the personality he did. I've tried fitting them both. They do, well, this 2-piece set fits the chassis. I can't quite get this 1-piece one in there. Man, my fingers are cold. These ones have bigger ports, and looks to me, I haven't put a tape measure on them, but it sure looks like the tubes are bigger, so they should flow a little better. But for doing low RPM truck stuff, I'm not sure that's really a factor. And I don't know what this coating is on, if that's actually ceramic or what, but I can't quite get this set weaseled down in there. They hit the frame and the bell housing. I don't know if jacking up the engine on the one side would help with that. And I even thought about cutting them in half like that one. I think that would work, but I like the way this is one piece in here, because if you look at the gasket, you got 1, 2, 3 bolt holes there, and that is where it's cut. So that leaves between here and there relatively with little clamping force. So yeah, another plus thing about this one, let me put this gasket away. See how well I can do this with one hand. Right down in there, the intake is going to have to be clearanced a little bit to clear that tube. Not much, or I could dent the tube. But on this one, what is that? The third, yeah. On this side, I don't have enough hands to hold it effectively. But because that one has a sharp bend in it, this one isn't quite as sharp. It will take more clearancing right there or a bigger dent in there. So that one actually fits a little bit better. It's too cold to be putting that on today. Today I'm trying to keep my gloves on and do removal type stuff that keeps the gloves on as much as possible. Right now I'm going to drop the gas tank because I imagine it's a rusty mess and I want to know for sure. If it's clean, I'll put it back in. If it's a rusty mess, I'll probably just be running some sort of a fuel tank or a cell up here at the front of the bed. As far as getting the header on, the next few days are supposed to be pretty cold here. Once we get a warm day, I might just go ahead and unbolt the engine mount, tip the engine up, see if I can get this one-piece header in there. While I was down there pulling the intake off a MOG, I stopped in at the parts shed, dug around my old carburetors. I found a 108 Motorcraft. It's not seized up. It's got a tag on it. As you can see, the mud daubers have done a pretty good job on it. I'll get a kit ordered for that. Well, good call on that one. No sooner, I just went ahead and cut the strap. Because like I said, I was betting big money this tank was crap, and it is. Got the strap cut. As soon as I bent the strap out of the way, she started leaking. Yeah, here's a little better shot of the tank once I got it pulled out. Definitely not a chance in hell this thing could have been used. I decided to go ahead and pull the plugs. Even though it did turn over, I did spray a little PB blaster in each cylinder and turn it over a little bit just to make sure. With the plugs, other than being a little sooty, looked like it was running rich. They look pretty good. A couple of them came out pretty hard though. Inside the distributor cap looked pretty nasty. The terminals, they are just rusty. I've never seen steel terminals in a cap before. They're either brass or aluminum. That's a first for me. Alright, once again, it's a couple days later. I think it's about 30 degrees out today. The wind's blowing. I'm hoping today to get the header and intake on that truck. I've got a old cylinder head up here in one of my scrap trailers. So I'm going to grab it and do some test fitting first. And I'm going to, while I'm up here, grab some other parts off of this red parts truck right here. I'm going to grab the brake booster, the radiator, and the brain box. I doubt that the brake booster's any good, but to save me some money, I'm going to give it a shot. Well, as I was unbolting the radiator, I thought there was hope for it because it still actually had antifreeze in it. But once I got it loose, this tank bracket's off completely. Yeah, sure, I could solder it back on, but I suck at soldering, and judging by the general condition of this, I bet it'll leak once it gets under pressure. I do have a couple other radiator options. The brain box was a bust too. Yeah, that's gonna get scrapped. I got other brain boxes, no big deal. Just thought since I was up here. The booster, I don't know, like I said, it might work, it might not. Even if it doesn't work, I still needed this bracket, so it had to come off. Nice thing about it is the column and the pedal assembly is already out, so really all I had to do is take these bolts off. Got a plastic barrel for a purpose, possibly for the truck. And here's the cylinder head. I'm gonna do some test fitting of that header and intake on it. So I think I'm really leaning towards using the silver or stainless steel headers, the two-piece job, but I am going to give this one a fair shake. I've determined that this is where the bolt clamps in this area. I'm going to cut out this triangle here, and then cut it here and make this a two-piece header. But by cutting it right there, the bolt should still grab there. Obviously it'll give this some sealing area and help out with this corner too. Whereas the ceramic headers, which I'm assuming are ceramic, there is nothing clamping it here. So, and hoping by cutting this into a two-piece, I can get it slipped into the chassis a little bit easier. The only bad thing so far I'm finding the ceramic headers is I might have to just slightly clearance the frame. It would probably work, but I really don't want them touching and rubbing. The spot right back there on that cross member, I might just heat it up with the torch, hammer it down a little, and then right in here it would just barely touch. I don't know if I'll just try to heat that up and bang it in a little bit, or just go ahead and cut a hole out with the torch. If I go with the ceramic header route, the ceramic headers, Yeah, one of the nice things about them, it's going to be a lot easier building exhaust for it. I'll get these cut and see how well they fit, or if I can even get them snaked in there with them cut in half. Okay, there it is right there, the cut. Hold down, engages both sides. Might be wondering why it seems like even though those are a better set to start with, that I keep trying to make these work. It's because the flanges on both this set and this set are just a little bit thinner than the tabs for mounting this. So I haven't measured it yet, but whatever the difference is between these two, I'll probably have to cut some shims, and it'll just be a lot easier to take those shims and just weld them right to the header flange. That way they don't get lost. I'm not fumbling around with quite so much stuff putting it together. And because I want to weld them right to the flange, not knowing what this coating is, I would rather try to keep the coating intact. But that's probably not that big of a deal dealing with the flanges. That's why if I do run these, I'm going to clearance the frame a little bit because I don't want it doing any more damage to that coating than I have to. But yeah, this cutting it in half, looking pretty good. I'll unbolt it from this head, see if I can get them snaked into the chassis and see how well they fit. Got the front half in, and I still cannot get the back half snaked in there, even cut in half. Even bigger problem, here, am I getting it? Look how close that tube is to that starter. You would have to pull these headers off to get that starter out. So I'm pretty sure I'm pulling the plug on using these headers, and I'm going to the ceramic coated ones. All right, clearance that cross member a little bit, heated up the torch, tapped it down, and that one right there. Well, those are cooling off. I'll do some measuring and see about making those shims. Okay, the test fit goes pretty well. I didn't make the shims to put underneath here, but as you can see, it doesn't seem to be a problem. There's only a 1/16 of an inch difference. Well, I tell you, I've never done one of these before. You really got to watch these washers. You get them in there crooked, and let's see, there's a good example. This one did it. It's kind of doing it now. So I might have to put a bigger washer in there or something. But yeah, when you're going to installing these, one of these washers will try to get down underneath one side or the other, and you really got to watch that. One thing that concerns me is this gasket. Basically, the intake gets more thickness than the exhaust. I don't know if that'll be a problem or not. This is gonna make you cringe. Look what I had to do to that intake to get it to clear that fourth header tube. And it gets worse. Let me unbolt this and show you. I had a little stupid moment. Wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. Okay, so here's the big problem. Getting in there to get all that ground out to clear that header tube. I got a little overzealous with the grinder and wasn't paying attention to what was going on. Yeah, got into that with the other side of the wheel. I don't have the capability to weld aluminum, or it'd be no problem. I'd just build that up again and file it down flat. But I'm going to have to call around and see if I know anybody that can weld aluminum for me pretty quick. So I was handling this brake booster the other day, and what appeared to be brake fluid came pouring out of the vacuum fitting. So I'm assuming it's bad. I was going to order a new one, but then I thought, well, why don't I just try to make something I got around here work? Got this. I got a 2002 F-150 out there I bought for the transmission to put in my Mercury Marauder. Going to try it. Looks to me like the bolt pattern here is different to bolt it to the bracket, but it looks like there's enough meat there. I should be able to re-drill it. I have to shorten up the push rod, and I already checked the master cylinder will actually fit this, so I'm in pretty good shape there, hopefully. I'm going to go see about finding another radiator. Why don't you come along with me? Radiator still in this. This is a buggy that four-wheel steer buggy I used to mud race years ago. I think this radiator is sourced from some sort of an 80s Ford van. Where'd the tape measure go? Yeah, easily fits the width requirements. Even though it's been sitting out in the weather for many years, it's as good a chance as any. I'll try this one. I think the radiator is going to work pretty good. It actually fits in there nicely. I think a couple of the holes are actually going to line up too. I'll just have to come up with some custom hoses. Although I did shake all of this, all these holes, a little bit of mouse nest out of the top tank. So I'm out here in the shop tonight. I know earlier, wasn't today, but a couple days ago when I was filming, I mentioned how much thicker the intake gasket was than the exhaust side. And seeing as how the intake was already a little bit thicker than the exhaust flange, I'm going to go ahead and make these shims. What I'm doing is I'm just cutting out these little things. I'm going to weld it on right there. As you can see, I've ground off whatever that coating is. I'm going to weld it on, all of them at once, flip the header over, and then shape the tab to the shape of the notch there to make up the extra thickness that the intake's going to have over this. Maybe I'm worrying about it too much, but I feel like the flatter I can keep these thick washers, the better they're going to clamp both the intake and the exhaust. Shims are welded on. Yeah, I know, they look like ass, but I don't care. The whole truck looks like ass. Okay, here's the finished result. Come on, focus. Yep, still looks like ass, but like I said, I believe it'll help the clamping, keeping those washers flat. Well, you get the idea. I'm going to move on to the next one. Alright, one more test fit. I tell you, this extra cylinder head round was invaluable. It taught me a lot about how to get this thing put together without having to try to wrestle it in there under the hood. It's kind of gave me an idea where some problem areas are going to be and what to keep my eye on, especially, yeah, keeping these big thick washers from falling in and getting cockeyed in there. I think I'm ready to take this apart, try to start putting stuff on the engine. I only managed to find 7 3/8 studs in town. I wanted to put all studs in this, but it is what it is. Okay, so hanging the headers on there kind of worked. The front one worked great because it's got this bolt on top. The rear one, not so much. I had to put a nut on this stud, but this one here is what's holding it more than anything. Must be why this tab up here has kind of a hook on it. I've got all the bottom ones, a nut started on them, and they're very, very loose. So hopefully I can get that intake just kind of slipped right in there from the top. I'm not even going to bother trying to record this because it would just, like I've said before, it's going to be easier to not have to deal with editing out all my cursing. So for those of you that remember my little oopsie with my manifold, looky there, got her all fixed up. Big thanks to AA Ron, one of my wheeling buddies. He got me all welded up and fixed up. Kind of disappointed he didn't make fun of me for my stupidity on that, but what are you going to do? Friends can't be perfect. Enough chattering. I'm going to try to wrestle that in there. Wish me luck. Okay, the first test fit did not go well because I cannot slip the intake in from the top like this because I've got a stud back there, and there's also this pin right here, so the intake's going to have to come in from the side. And in order to do that, I had to remove the bolt and washer that was holding the rear header up in this corner. I've got just one of these little tiny headed header bolts stuck in there, so hopefully the intake will clear that. It's just barely holding that header in, so it'll be pretty easy to knock it loose. See there? Just like that. Maybe I should try to put a small washer on it to hold it. I'll try getting the intake on there first. If I knock it loose, I'll stick a washer on there. So even that tiny little header bolt was in the way of getting the intake in. What I finally had to do was just take the bolt out, let the rear header drop, slip the intake on, and there was enough room to get the rear header snaked up in there again. So I think I got everything in place. it's hanging there. I'll start putting bolts in, tightening it down, and the intake isn't going to go anywhere because it's got that alignment pin, and this stud back here is very snug. I'll have to jimmy around the headers a little bit to get them to an optimum clamping position, and keep a close eye on how well these thick washers are seating in between the exhaust and the intake. Yep, it's all off of there again. The Ronster is not pleased. I had everything on there, all the bolts, nuts, everything, had them snugged down finger tight enough that, yeah, everything wouldn't jiggle. And I was looking at it from every angle I could to make sure all the washers were seating on the intake and the header. And I got underneath and things looked a little weird. The washers were up snug against the header flange, but way, way far from even touching the intake manifold. Something was keeping it from seating. So I investigated, pulled it all off, but I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up. Right here, it doesn't go all the way across, but there's a spot, I don't know, what's that, about 6 inches or so, right along in here, where the block sticks out just below the head. And then there's another stretch of it over here. Now I compared the gasket sits above that, so that's not a problem. But once you compare the gasket to the header, yes, the header flange hangs below the gasket and is hitting that little bit of extra coming off the engine block. To me, the solution is either to grind the flange down, which I'm not going to do, or grind the block down, which I will do that. Ground off. That one's ground off too, but I wiped it with a rag, so it doesn't look clean. But, all right, back to it. See how things go now. There's the final install, hopefully. It's all tightened down, but everything looks good. All the washers look like they're sitting pretty flat. The only thing that's bothering me is, see if I can get it here on camera. Yeah, I hope down further in that flange it is actually sealed, because that looks pretty loose there. But it is tight, so I don't know. We'll find out when I fire it up someday, if ever. Look at this. At the rate this project's going, it's... Oh, I'm getting frustrated with it. It just seems like I'm not getting anything done. Seems like a nice clean place to rebuild a carburetor, don't you think? Yeah, I think it'll be fine. There's a much better shot of the job the mud daubers have done on it. I'm not going to show you how to rebuild a Ford 2-barrel carburetor. They're stupid simple to rebuild, and there's probably videos out there telling you how to do it, so I'm not going to bother. You're just going to have to look elsewhere. Yep, it don't look rebuilt, but it's clean where it matters. I'm going to do something that I think is unusual. Of course, I'm going to need some sort of adapter plate, but I'm going to run it like that. I'm not sure if an adapter plate exists already that I could buy, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to make one. There's my homemade creation. Crude but effective. There it is in all its glory. I wanted to run it sideways because I wanted to, how do I explain it? The way the runners are set up in here, if I had it turned forward, it seemed like the one side of the carburetor would have been mostly feeding 4 cylinders, and the other side would have been feeding the other 2 outermost. I figure it's going to distribute better this way because there's like a split in this runner, I believe. Well, there is. I just don't know exactly what it does when it gets further in here. So I just figured, yeah, it'd be better distribution having it sitting sideways like that. sun's shining. It's a beautiful 50-degree day out. Let's get some work done. Decided to start off with something hopefully easy today. By the amount of oil all over this, I assumed the valve cover gasket was leaking, so I thought I'd change that. Doesn't look too bad in there. Not a bunch of caked up nasty sludge inside the valve cover. It looks pretty good too. Not Steve! Here's a little tip for you. Sometimes I can't find the barbed fittings that just have a round bulge in them. So you get these barbed fittings with the nice sharp edge. I like to take a file and take the edge off of each little barb. It's kind of a tedious job, but boy, it does help. Because, yeah, about the only way to get a hose off of that type of barbed fitting is to cut it off. Well, sometimes you can't afford to lose the length. So, yeah, I like to round those barbs off. Like I said, it's tedious, but it's well worth it. The one on the right is a fresh one. The one on the left is one I took a file to. Doesn't look like much, but it does make a big difference. As usual, the sun's setting. I was hoping to get a little work done on getting my brake booster converted, but let's look at what I did get done. Obviously, I got my valve cover gasket done. Wire brushed the valve cover too, so it looks nice and spiffy in case I want to stop at a car show and on the way there or back. Got this big old steel gas tank. I made this thing years ago and had it in the back of an F-250 for a while because the factory tank had some rust in it, and it turns out this did too. So I went ahead and went back to the factory tank. Seeing as how I know this has rust in it, I set my fuel system up to where there's a filter right after the tank with a 90-degree ball valve. So I can keep an eye on the filter, see how much crap is in it, and if I need to pull the filter out and shake the rust flakes out of it or to replace the filter, I got the 90-degree ball valve. That runs. I skipped all the rusty lines back here because originally this thing was a dual tank truck, so I just bypassed all of the dual tank stuff and hooked the line in right about here underneath the cab. So hopefully that line's good. So far I'm not seeing any leaks. Gonna run up here to the mechanical pump and over to the carburetor. So the fuel system is done. It's ready to fire, other than I don't have my new distributor cap and rotor yet. I got the plug wires. So where's my stuff, Brock Auto? Anyway, I guess that's all I'm gonna do for today. Well, here it is the next day. Still no distributor cap and rotor, but I'll press on regardless. I started putting the radiator in. Here on the passenger side, the bolt holes do line up. They don't over here, but there is a spot. Should be pretty easy to drill right there. So I'll mark those out and get them drilled, and then try to come up with some cobbled mess of hoses to get it hooked up. I guess if typically my deliveries come by this time, but if it shows up later this afternoon, hopefully I'll try to start it up. If not, if I have time, I got a parts truck up in the field. I'll go check it out, see if it's got a decent cap and rotor on it. Radiator's in. Let's take a look at this fabulous cobble job of making hoses. Oh yeah, the bottom's even better. Oh, that's something to be proud of, isn't it? I've seen worse. It's filled up, no leaks so far. I decided to go ahead and put used cap and rotor in it. Got the new plug wires on, got a brain box plugged in. I'm gonna set up the camera, hook up the battery, and let's see if this bitch will run. Battery's hooked up. There's no smoke rolling yet. Can't find my gas squirter bottle. I wanted to prime the carburetor, but I'll just crank it and see what happens, I guess. I'm in there pumping on the gas pedal. I don't even have a throttle cable hooked up yet. I'm going to have to make a longer one to reach the carburetor. Okay, accelerator pump is working. Seeing as how I have no throttle control from in there, I'll just leave the key on and crank it from out here. Maybe. Idle. too bad. No smoke, no clatter, and I think we got a winner here. I think it was worth all the work. I'd like to take this opportunity to dispel a myth that I see a lot on the internet about the belief of these Ford brain boxes. People say they have to be grounded. They do not. They do not have to be grounded. I mean, if you notice the ones in the 80s, they're mounted to a plastic inner fender well. Anyway, I'm going to shut the camera off, let it warm up. I don't know if it's picking it up, but the coolant's flowing. Well, it was. Not the old voom-pa that the straight sixes do. I'm afraid that the clutch disc might be stuck to the flywheel or the pressure plate. I'm going to give that a try. Clutch seems to be free. Looks like my big obstacles now are wiring, brakes, and some exhaust that I'm aware of. Well, folks, you've seen it run, you've seen it move. I'm calling that alive, so this is a success. I've got about a week to go before the trip, so I still have plenty to do. I'm going to wrap this video up and call it good. Brakes, got to do the master cylinder, the booster. I'm sure the lines back there at the back are a total mess. Clean the interior out, maybe check the rear cab floors, see if I need to do some of that. Go through all the electrical, find out what's working, what's not. Got to do a throttle cable. Yeah, exhaust. Yeah, there's more than that I'm probably not even realizing or forgetting. So we're going to call this one good, and we'll see you next week. And remember to get out there, find you a project, and have some fun with it.